Hi all, just wanted to go through some Seahawks and some draft topics here on a Wednesday, and want to start by talking about the opponents this weekend for Seattle, the Carolina Panthers. Watched them on Monday Night Football losing to the Saints, and my big takeaway from that game was, wow, does Bryce Young look terrified of playing in the NFL? And it just got me thinking, really. I don't really understand why teams year on year feel like they've got to shove these quarterbacks into starting roles. When you can look at Kansas City and you see what they did with Patrick Mahomes, they traded way up to go and get Patrick Mahomes and then sat him behind Alex Smith for a year, gave him a redshirt year. And look, Patrick Mahomes is incredibly talented. It's not that you don't automatically get a Patrick Mahomes from sitting a quarterback for a year, but it can't do them any harm. And it feels as if the NFL has twisted itself in knots because it just feels with the cheap rookie contracts, it has to start maxing out that rookie value immediately. So you've got to play those quarterbacks. You've got to throw them in at the deep end. And when I'm watching Bryce Young and CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson, I'm thinking, why are these guys just being chucked out there into the lion's den when they don't look that ready? And of the three, Anthony Richardson looks the most ready, which is perhaps what people least expected when they were going into the draft. But the reason that he perhaps looks the most ready is simply because he's such an athlete that he can make things happen around him to compensate for the fact that in terms of processing and the stuff, that the mental side of things that come with being an NFL quarterback, he's got enough athletic talent to make up for that. But even then, he gets a concussion. He has to leave week 2 and now he's in concussion protocol. So why are they just not sitting these guys, letting them learn so that when they actually get the opportunity to start, they can feel confident in themselves. They can feel ready. Because the thing that I thought watching Bryce Young is he just does not look ready. It went viral, or a little bit viral. There was this clip where he's not even lining up under center. He's lining up behind the right guard, and the running backs having to shove him into position to take the snap. Like this, I just don't think teams are handling these quarterbacks very well. And the takeaway that I get from that is, I hope the Seahawks do this differently. And look, I'm going to talk about the quarterbacks in this 2024 draft class in a bit. There are a lot of them. I am adding more and more to the list. I think I've not done a count. I probably should have done it before I started the video. I think I've got about 13 quarterbacks currently that I'm tentatively grading in the first 2 days of the draft, which is a lot of quarterbacks, which means that you will have an opportunity as the Seahawks to draft somebody, to sit them, to let them develop. Rather than, I wish that teams, or at least I wish my team, the Seahawks, I don't care what other teams do, but I hope that my team will view a rookie contract not as an opportunity to throw someone in at the deep end and splurge a load of money on other areas of the team necessarily, but to use the cheap nature of a rookie contract to develop a player. To say, okay, this player is not going to cost us that much money. He's not a $40 million a year quarterback or more. He is a cheap rookie. We can spend a year, 2 years, maybe even 3, just teaching this guy how to play the position, making sure that he has mastered the playbook and not having to learn it on the run, and just giving him the opportunity to learn from a good mentor, a quarterback who has been through the highs and lows of the NFL, as, in fairness, Geno Smith and Drew Lock have, and give them that opportunity to learn so that down the line, they have got the best possible opportunity to succeed, not just having them go out there and face the music and look like Bryce Young currently looks like. Look, maybe he will get over this hurdle, and in a few weeks' time, we'll see the Bryce Young that we saw at Alabama. But if I was a Panthers fan looking at that the other day, I would be very worried, because Bryce Young, to me, just does not look ready. He doesn't look ready, and I actually think that his head looks scrambled, and I worry that his career is going to stall before it even begins. Look, it's too soon to write anybody off. I'm certainly not writing him off, but I would be very, very concerned if I were the Carolina Panthers seeing that. And like I say, look, the Seahawks have got Geno Smith contracted beyond this season, and yes, he will hit accelerators, and potentially, if he plays like he did against Detroit, he's going to hit those accelerators and end up earning about $40 million a year next year. But he is 34 as well next year. So I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world if you draft a quarterback next year, whether you keep Drew Lock or not, and I'm going to come back to that in a second, but if you draft a quarterback in Geno Smith's 34th year. When Geno Smith is 35, 36, 37, you could then have a player perfectly positioned to take over. Let's not automatically assume that Geno Smith, just because he started to hit the peak of his career later than most people, is going to now play till 45. That's still not realistic. You still get old. I'm 40 next year. You still feel old. I've not played a snap of NFL football. I don't feel younger now than I did 10 years ago. It's just age catches up with you. Father Time's undefeated for a reason. So I think actually drafting somebody with the idea of, hey, let's draft somebody who could potentially take over from Geno Smith, whenever that is, whether that's in 2025, 26, 27, whenever it is, but you draft somebody and you have them there, that would be the best thing for the Seahawks, in my opinion, to sort of have that at least that thought of transition and having one in the chamber, as John Schneider might say, in terms of the quarterback position. And then with Drew Lock, Drew Lock's out of contract again next year. And the other thing we've got to remember here is the Seahawks currently have about $900,000 to spend in terms of cap space next year. Now, yes, they will free money up. They have to. It's impossible. They will have to find a way to free money up. And there's various ways that they could do that. I suspect that one way or another it will involve Geno Smith's contract. Either he will not play well enough over the subsequent 15 games of the regular season, so that there's a parting, or they will rework his deal to free up some cap space, which, quarterbacks do that every year pretty much. So I don't think that's unusual. I think that's probably where a lot of money will be freed up one way or another, and they will just borrow off his contract to free up cap space. But if you are looking to make a saving somewhere, Drew Lock's salary, whatever that is an easy way to save money if you just put a rookie in as the backup. So eventually they are going to have to either make a decision. Either Geno Smith is going to be the quarterback for the next sort of 2-3 years, or Drew Lock is. And if it's not going to be Drew Lock, then he probably himself wants to go somewhere else where he's got a better chance to start. And the Seahawks will have to think about transition plan at the backup position as well as transition plan long-term at the position. So all I'm saying is, even if they keep Drew Lock, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, given that he's going year to year, to have a young quarterback on the roster who you can work with in the background, so that you avoid, in whenever that is, in a few years' time, necessarily having to throw a rookie in at the deep end like the Panthers are doing. And I just think that's a good plan. I think it's the right plan. And it's something that, watching Bryce Young on Monday, I just thought, I do not want to be in that position. Because with all of his career at Alabama, he was a picture of composure. He looked on it. He looked like a superstar. Yes, there were physical limitations, but he looked like he just got it. Got the position, was like he had like a pro's mentality. Like people were referring to like the Steph Curry of college football. And that's how he carried himself. And he looked like a lost little boy on Monday night. And again, maybe he will improve with experience, but if you can just avoid sort of having to throw somebody in at the deep end, then I think that would be the best thing for all concerned for the Seahawks in terms of the long term. Right, the Panthers on the whole, they didn't look very good. Now, it was a tight game, in terms of the scoreline at least. I thought the Panthers looked quite terrible on Monday. And because of the situation with Bryce Young, he doesn't have enough weapons. The O-line doesn't look great. They don't have a running game. Defensively, they've got some good pieces, but they've started to lose players to injury as well. They've lost their best cornerback, their best linebacker. This has got all of the makings, I think, of a handsome Seahawks win. The kind of win they need at home to just sort of move forward. 'Cause they haven't won enough home games over the last few years. The defense has started poorly again. This could be a confidence-boosting, morale-boosting win. It might be a bit of a red herring if they go and blow the Panthers away or shut them out, which I don't think is beyond possibility, by the way. And maybe not in terms of a goose egg, but maybe in terms of them not scoring touchdowns. I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that Bryce Young is going to drown amid the noise of Lumen Field this weekend and the Seahawks get a very, very comprehensive win. But I still think there's a good chance for the Seahawks to develop and build on the momentum of Detroit. And that's why I think this is the perfect opponent to go out there, get a comfortable win and move forward at 2-1. I think there's a really good chance of that happening. It's what I would predict. I think it's going to be a good win for the Seahawks this week. One thing I am a little bit concerned about, though, is I saw a tweet from a guy called Ian Hartitz, which is a great name, by the way. Hartitz. He tweeted, Jaxon Smith-Njigba's average target depth this season is 1.8 yards, which is dead last among 97 receivers with 5+ targets. So, to cut through the NFL jargon there, he is receiving the ball, he's been targeted with the football just 1.8 yards down the field, which shows that he is essentially in the first 2 games just being used around the line of scrimmage. I am a little bit worried about that. It seems to me like over the years, the Seahawks have struggled to properly know how to feature a third wide receiver, which is a really important aspect of the game. You know, we've often said, and I buy into this, that you're only as good as your third receiver in the modern NFL. And the Seahawks have got a very good one, drafted him in the first round. They obviously know how to utilise Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. It was a positive showing for the tight ends last week. But why are they not finding a way to get Jaxon Smith-Njigba involved in the way that he can hurt teams? Now, for me, when I watch Jaxon Smith-Njigba at Ohio State, he's good on the outside, uses agility, not at the line of scrimmage, but sort of in that intermediate level and deeper level down the middle, which is where he creates his best separation using that agility, because he's not quick, and you can see that on the field. He's not a sudden receiver in that regard, but he is you know, you see with his short shuttle and stuff like that, he is very agile and can shake off defenders, and that works best over the middle on an intermediate level. I would love to see some context. I'm not an X's and O's expert, but some ways to play off the tight ends, to have him running across the middle, to mix in DK running across the middle, which is also something I don't think they've done enough of over the years, with Jaxon Smith-Njigba outside, and take some shots to him as well, and because he is good at that. And just find a way to make the most of this weapon. If the Seahawks have got the weapons on their offense to become a juggernaut, to be a truly formidable offense, and especially with the passing weapons that they've got, they can use the passing game to really open the running game up as well. I mean, we saw last week, Ken Walker had a couple of touchdowns, but there wasn't much running room. Zach Charbonnet had to fight for every yard that he got when he got some snaps. So I just feel as if, look, go out there, really take the game to opponents with your passing game, because that is the strength of this team. It is Geno Smith playing like he did last weekend, and your receivers and your tight ends, and your pass blocking, which was well schemed and executed last week against a tough opponent on the road. So that's where your strength is. That's how you have to attack teams. And that will set up the running game, and it will help the defense because you'll put scoreboard pressure on opponents. So that, to me, is the way forward for this team in 2023. But in order to do that, they have to find a way to get Jaxon Smith-Njigba involved. And it can't be, targeting him consistently 1 or 2 yards off the line of scrimmage. You have to be a bit more aggressive with him and try and get him involved in the passing game with some explosive plays. That's what I hope to see. No better opportunity to do that than this weekend against Carolina. I wanted to finish by talking about some draft stuff. I'm deep into it. I've probably mentioned this before on streams and in articles. In Britain, we have no access to college football anymore. We've gone from having 8 to 10 games a weekend, and I would just sort of dive into it. I would record several games and then just sort of replay and watch them back and everything like that. We don't have any of that anymore. So I'm reliant on YouTube and streams and stuff like that I can find. I have to watch it live. I can't pause, rewind, and do anything like that like I used to. So it's been a bit of a chore. It means that I'm sort of scouting games on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday rather than Saturday night. But thank you to the many people who are making my life a lot easier by putting videos on YouTube. And there's too many to mention, but if you are doing that, thank you. Especially the ones where you break down full snaps for an offense and offense versus defense, or full snaps for a particular player. Highlights are not as useful, but those videos that break down the individual players or individual offenses and defenses every single snap of a game are absolute priceless for me. I have had a chance to look. I've dove straight into the quarterbacks because I enjoy quarterback scouting, and I do think the Seahawks are going to draft a quarterback sooner rather than later. I know people are saying, well, it's just not in John Schneider's nature, or Pete Carroll won't want to draft a quarterback because he's coming towards the end of his career. But the franchise isn't just going to think completely short term here. John Schneider has a longer contract than Pete Carroll. John Schneider, I get the sense, loves nothing more than scouting quarterbacks. I think it's like his favourite thing. He's from that Green Bay tree where they want to take quarterbacks a lot. And I think he's just a very picky quarterback drafter and wants to fall in love with somebody to take them rather than just take one for the sake of it. And I think he will find quarterbacks in this class that he likes. And I want to spend a bit of time talking about them. I have spent a lot of time watching defensive linemen as well. I have to say there's been a lot of hype and push for these defensive tackles that are coming in the draft. And look, I've got a long list of defensive tackles as well. I've currently got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 that I've watched that I think could go between rounds 2 and 4. But I'm not seeing any defensive tackle that I truly want to put into round 1. Testing, and well, there's a lot of the season to go, first of all. That's the first and foremost thing. But then testing and stuff like that can adjust grades. We're at the very beginning of the process. We're nowhere near the end of the process. But I'm just sort of talking about the tentative grades that I'm putting now after my initial scouting, and those I adjust those grades, and then eventually when I publish my board on the blog, you will see a bit more studying, a bit more work has gone into that. McKinley Jackson is the best defensive tackle I've seen if people are interested at Texas A&M, and Byron Murphy at Texas I think is very good, and Michael Hall Jr. at Ohio State. They're the three that I've watched that have impressed me the most. I think Tavondre Sweat has had a very good year, but there's sort of, I don't know, there's a lot of bad weight on him. He's like 360 odd pounds, and there are sort of hit and miss effort moments, but he is an athlete for his size. He is probably the most dynamic nose tackle I've seen so far this year, and he has had a very good start to the season. It's just, he's needed someone to light a fire up his arse for the last few years. It seems like it's finally happened, and he is performing now. But I also think Byron Murphy at Texas has been fantastic to start the year. So just some names there. But with the quarterbacks, I came into this year skeptical. People were saying it's an amazing quarterback class, yada, yada, yada. I was always saying, look, it's the depth rather than the talent necessarily. That I don't think we're going to see 3 quarterbacks go in the top 5 like we did this year. I think in terms of the talent at the top end, it's not as strong. But in terms of the thickness of the quarterback draft, it's a lot better. And I stand by that. I don't think, for example, Drake May is a top 5 lock. I don't think Drake May is probably the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th best quarterback eligible for next year based on what I've seen so far. But he has got some intriguing skills and talent. And I think he could easily be a first-round pick. I just don't think he's as good as everybody's pushing at the moment. So obviously Caleb Williams at USC, he's going to be the number 1 overall pick next year. You can just put that in ink. It's going to happen. I think Riley Leonard at Duke is really good. He's really created a good impression for me. Big, tall, excellent runner. He's had some runs where he's made people miss in the open field. He's driven through contact. He's a very creative runner. He's got a little bit of that Josh Allen quality as a runner, and can certainly make things happen when the play breaks down. I think he's got an elite arm, but he's got a good enough arm. I think that you want to see him deal with pressure a little better, but I think that there's also evidence on tape of him working the offense properly. He doesn't come close to turnovers. I think Riley Leonard has got a ton of potential. Now, whether or not he declares for the draft next year and comes out and is ready, whether he'd be better off having another year, I'm not sure. But I really like Riley Leonard. I think he's a very, very good player. Spencer Rattler, I think, is immensely talented. Fantastic arm. When he was being touted as a 1st or 2nd overall pick a few years ago at Oklahoma, I pushed back against that. I thought he was reckless with the ball. I thought he was just trusting his arm too much. He would regularly throw into double and triple coverage and just throw wildly and just hope for the best. And I don't think he was taking it seriously. I think he looked to me like somebody who'd been told how good he was for too long, that was probably reading some of those mock drafts, seeing him 1st and 2nd overall, perhaps felt he was a little bit invincible. And then when he was going out there, it just wasn't happening. I think the light has switched on. It's taken a long time, but he looks mature, he looks in control, he's making the right decisions, he's keeping South Carolina in a game against Georgia, which is no mean feat. They were like a 26-point underdog, and they lost by 10 points. And the conditions in the second half were so difficult, that could have been a closer game. He wasn't helped out by his O-line again, or his receivers who were dropping the football. I think Spencer Rattler's a lot better than a lot of people are saying out there. I think he's got a fantastic future if he can keep this sort of level of maturity and approach and dedication to his craft. And I do think the Seahawks will be interested in him. Great arm, can make things happen, good enough as a scrambler. You know, he is a poor... When you say stuff like this, people overreact to it, but he is a poor man's Patrick Mahomes. He plays so similarly to Mahomes. He just isn't Mahomes, because there isn't going to be another Mahomes, and he isn't going to play at that level. But in terms of his body type, the arm, the way that he throws, the fact that he's not a dynamic runner, but he can extend plays and break off runs and stuff like that. He is like a poor man's Mahomes, and I do think the Seahawks will be interested in him. Michael Penix Jr., fantastic arm, just an arm for the ages. it's a joy to watch him. I thoroughly enjoy watching the Washington offense purely for entertainment value because you've got a huge arm quarterback who doesn't face any pressure. The O-line does a good job. The system also helps the quarterback out. And he has NFL receivers, 3 of them, to throw to. And as a consequence, it's an highly explosive offense. And he makes it happen. The thing is, though, I just wonder a little bit whether he's become a bit careless and reckless at times. Not because people are sort of going crazy about Michael Penix Jr., but I thought we saw against Michigan State an issue that we've seen in some other games. In the first 2 games, he had some ugly overthrows where I think he's got too much time. He's got too much trust in the arm. He's launching it downfield, and there wasn't that accuracy and that touch and that feel. It was just, I'm going to throw this as far as I can downfield and hope the receiver makes a play, and it's too much. And in the game against Michigan State, he did have a lot of throws where he asked a lot of his receivers, and they just made a play because they're so good. There's at least 1 first-round pick. I think Odunze is a first-round pick. I think in every sense of the word, he's a first-round pick. I think McMillan, potentially sort of day 2, but I think Odunze first-round pick for sure. And these guys are, and Polk, they're bailing him out a little bit. I mean, one of the touchdowns he had against Michigan State was on a tip that should have been intercepted, and it falls into Polk's hands, and he kind of runs through some abysmal tackling and gets in. And Michigan State's defense is an abomination as well. So that is worth remembering. But the arm is so good. So this is what teams are going to have to think. They're going to have to weigh up. I love the arm. That arm's going to be unbelievable. But he's playing in a system where he never gets sacked, so that's not going to be like the NFL. He's throwing to receivers who are just outclassing the defensive backs they're playing. That's not going to happen every time in the NFL. And the scheme is not translatable. It's very much of the spread. It's that sort of very similar to Ohio State and these mass production offenses. That's yes, there are concepts within the NFL that lean on that, especially in the modern day. But it's not a translatable offense. So how, as an NFL evaluator, do you weigh up arm talent and some athleticism versus all of those other things that just make you pause for thought, plus there's the injury history. So I don't think Michael Penix Jr. is necessarily going to be that top 20 pick like everyone's saying. He's also going to go no lower than day 2 because there's obviously that arm is that good, but a very intriguing player. And I could imagine the Seahawks like him because of that arm. You've got Shadir Sanders. I don't think Sanders is going to declare next year. I think he's going to do 2 years at Colorado with his dad. And I think he could easily be the number 1 overall pick in 2025. There's just a bit of magic there, as there is with his dad, who is the best thing about football at any level at the minute, I think. Drake May, talked about him briefly already. Lot of talent, big, tall, athletic, improvises very, very well, but just has a tendency to make bonehead mistakes. And sometimes the chances that he takes are too risky. And I think there's just a little bit of something there that I'm not buying in terms of the top 5 stuff. I don't think he's as good as Riley Leonard based on what I'm seeing so far. But there is talent there. I think he could easily be a first-round pick, but not a top 5 pick based on what I've seen so far. And then as you go down the list a little bit here, just to run through, I watched Will Howard for the first time this week at Kansas State. Will Howard is not a flawless prospect. And the idea is, when I say I like somebody, it's not to say he's amazing, he never does anything wrong. Will Howard does things wrong. He has, on tape, some bad overthrows. He has some ugly interceptions. When he faces pressure, I think sometimes he just needs to learn to eat a sack or read a blitz better, because there are occasions where he has pressure right in his face because he's not diagnosed the blitz, and his reaction is to get it out, and he throws it straight to the defender, and that's not good. But when I watched him, I sat up in my chair, and I don't think I've done that with anybody else apart from maybe Graham Barton, the Duke left tackle that I've watched this year. He makes NFL throws over the middle, into the immediate level. He is throwing into tight windows. He is sort of deceiving defenders by looking them off and then throwing into tight areas. He has got a pretty arm. He's extremely mobile and can make plays with his legs. I think Will Howard is a really talented player. I don't know how high he's going to go. I've tentatively thought round 2 for now. I am open to the idea of him going higher than that in terms of getting a grade on my board, because I just really like the way that he plays. I think he's an exciting prospect, and I can't wait to watch more. You can probably tell when I watched him, I thought, there's something here. There is something with this guy. He's got a natural ability. And there are so many throws in the NFL, like when you watch Penix and you see him sort of lobbing it down, just launching it downfield, and it's, wow, look at the arm, amazing, and big plays and all of that. That's what he's about. Spencer Rattler, I've already talked about, is somewhat similar in that regard. But then you see sort of Will Howard, it's not so much the, wow, look at that arm, amazing. It's that, look how he's fitting passes into tight, congested areas with accuracy and timing and anticipation, which is what you have to do at the NFL. And I just think, and he has got a decent arm, it's not a bad arm, and he is big and he's athletic. And there is something about him. And there's a picture on Google, if you look for him, smoking 2 cigars at once when they won the Big 12 last year. So I think that there are things to like about him. And I'm on the hype train for him. Go and check him out, the Kansas State quarterback. Tyler Van Dyke's having a better start to the year. Good for him. Mario Cristobal's offense I think it has adapted. I have to give a tip of the cap to him for that. He's more aggressive this year. Thank God, having threatened to ruin Justin Herbert's college career and then Tyler Van Dyke's. It's good to see that, and he started well, and he's starting to look like the player who could have been a high pick before. Bo Nix has got some talent. He's got some arm talent. He's got some athleticism. He's touched throwing downfield is good. I don't know if I'll ever be able to get over what happened at Auburn. I need to try and get over that a little bit, but I'm interested to see Oregon play tougher opponents. Like when he comes up against Michael Penix Jr., can he win that in a shootout? That's what I want to see from him to sort of really believe in him. At the moment, I'm sort of thinking round 3 for Bo Nix. Same for Jordan Travis, who's neat and tidy, very athletic, moves around at Florida State. Perhaps hasn't got some of the major upside that some of these other guys have, but he's a reasonable player. I think he warrants a day 2, sort of round 3-ish grade. Cam Ward at Washington State, the more I watch from him, he has got something about him. He is throwing with anticipation. He is very athletic. He can throw downfield. He's making a range of throws. He can extend plays. He can scramble. There's a lot to like there. He's making Washington State relevant this year. They are ranked. And again, he's another player that I want to see them when I'm going to be at the Apple Cup. Fingers crossed. If I can get a ticket or a press pass, I will be at the Apple Cup. I want to see Cameron Ward versus Michael Penix. I'm very excited about that. I'm probably more excited about that than I am the Seahawks-Niners game, which I'm going to go to. So I look forward to sort of seeing that if I get an opportunity, because I like what he's about. I've spent a bit of time studying him last night. Quinn Ewers is, it's hard to watch him do so well against Alabama and then struggle against Rice and Wyoming. And I don't get it. He's smaller, he's 195 pounds. Arm talent, very good. Whip-like release, excellent. There is talent there in terms of his technique and his mechanics. He is mobile, but he just can't get out of his own way sometimes. He's erratic, and that is a troubling thing. And then, as I look down the list, Taulia Tungavailoa is Tua's brother. I think he's a fourth rounder type. I think he's not necessarily going to be somebody who starts immediately. There's just something there. He is like a poor man's version of his brother, but he does kind of make things happen. He's not leading an outstanding Maryland team, but he has got something about him. I'm surprised that Alabama didn't try and get him on a transfer portal to be their quarterback this year and get him back there, because he has got something about him, and I like him. He makes mistakes, but he also makes plays and makes things happen. So there's that. I've not had a chance to watch Michael Pratt that much this year. Tulane tape's not readily available, and he's been out injured. Grayson McCall, I think, is a day 3 type. You can watch Grayson McCall and see him make some throws and be very impressed. There are also some limitations. There are some scheme question marks. There are some games where when he played UCLA, a couple of bad picks. There are things that maybe just to take the momentum off that. But, a player that I think someone will take in day 3, and maybe he can work his way into competing for a starting job one day. Jaden Daniels probably very much the same ballpark with that. Not a spectacular player, but somebody who can come in and compete and be part of something, and, a shot to nothing in day 3. I'm not a massive JJ McCarthy fan. I don't think he's got the arm strength necessarily to drive the football into tight areas. I watched him throw 2 shocking interceptions last weekend. Michigan haven't played anybody yet. I want to see him taking on big opponents, high-powered opponents, outscoring them. For me, I'm just not as sold on him as other people are right now. Not saying he's bad, not saying he's not got a pro future. I just think there's a lot more quarterbacks who are more exciting physically than he is. Anyway, that's my thoughts. It's quite a lot of thoughts there, but it just to show what a deep quarterback class this is. I think that one of those players or somebody else who I've not maybe scouted yet is going to be drafted by the Seahawks next year. Maybe not in round 1, might be a day 2 pick, but I do think it's primed. I think a lot of teams will be looking at this and thinking we're going to take a quarterback next year, and I think the Seahawks will be one of those. An investment in that, either to be the backup for Geno Smith or to be the heir apparent. I think that's what they're going to be looking at. Exciting quarterback class. Hope you like those thoughts. Make sure you subscribe for all of my Seahawks videos and live streams. We'll be doing a live stream after the Panthers game, as we always do after every single Seahawks game. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment. What are you thinking about the quarterbacks? What are you thinking about Bryce Young's performance so far? How do you think the Seahawks are going to go against the Panthers? Do they need to prioritise Jaxon Smith-Njigba like I'm suggesting in this video over the coming weeks? What do you think? Let me know. SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis. Until next time, bye for now.